Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm very excited to introduce you to our guest. Before I do that, here is a quote just for this episode. Now you know the difference of getting paid not for what you do, but for what you know. You now understand. You got value now. Sell that value. Rich Light's dad. Our guest today, 34 plus years, to my knowledge at least, an expert as it relates all things cars, how they look, how to make them better,
Yeah,
detail, wash, the whole nine, the gamut. Started with $6.95 car washes to creating an international brand as it relates to founding Glossit,
right. Which
Glossop
is,
University,
yeah,
mentoring people all over the world, and actually has this amazing video on VinWiki of this story that of a Ferrari flip gone
La
wrong.
Ferrari, Steve Wynn, the story of how Steve Wynn lost the Ferrari franchise at the Wynn. And that came out a couple years ago. And that was a journey for me to actually start sharing car stories related to my business, right? And how those were pivoting points in my decision of what I wanted to be as an entrepreneur, what I wanted to be as a brand, and then understanding what the brand was going to represent. And it turned into something totally off cuff because with social media, there's a lot of information here, but I do want to come off across a point because you started off with something pretty cool. I told a story on the Van Wiki channel about my relationship with Peterbilt trucks, and this is back in 1997. And Peterbilt, as you guys know, is the largest manufacturer of semi trucks in the world. They also own a company called Kenworth. And I remember one day, and I had a little shop, but this is before the Glossop brand even existed. I got a call from the Rolls-Royce dealership, which was owned by the Chasins, which are no longer an automotive group in Las Vegas. But I happened to be pretty close to a lot of the family members, and they called me up and said, "Hey, we got this weird request. This trucking company down at the Bellagio has a convention for International Truck Show, and they got a problem with four black semi trucks that they're going to show as these brand new models to look more car-like than semi look." And it was funny. This is a really good story. And it goes back to what you talked about the quote, and I'm going to tell the story, and I'm going to tell how it ended up. And I told this on YouTube and Van Wiki, and it did pretty well. People really liked the story. So I go down to the Bellagio, and I meet some of the Kenworth executives. They said, "Follow us. We're going to go back to the ballrooms where we've got everything set up." We walked in. It was a huge ballroom, and there was a stage with a curtain. They pulled back the curtains, and I couldn't really see anything because it was pretty dark in that room. And then they asked the rigging guys to turn the lights on, and I saw four black semis up on a stage that looked more modular than like a boxy semi truck. And it looked like somebody had taken steel wool to all four of these trucks and destroyed the paint. And the show was coming up the next day. So the executives looked at me, and this is what they told me. They said, "Listen, we hear you're the guy in Vegas that knows black cars, black finishes, and you're the man that can solve the problem. Do you think that you can do this?" And I replied, "Absolutely, I can do this." And this was kind of the start of why I started Glossip, because a lot of the products on the market weren't cutting edge technology as far as polishing and buffing. And I was already working on a polish with Alcoa, which is a manufacturer of aluminum oxide and abrasives. So anyway, I look at the trucks and I said, "I absolutely can help you. I can get these done. Give me 4 or 5 days and I'll have them looking like brand new." And the guy looked at me and started laughing and said, "We need them by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning." I said, "Do you know what kind of crew this is going to take? This is an all-nighter job. Do you know what kind of money this is going to cost?" And the guy said, "Give us a number." And I said,
Wow.
$25,000, thinking that he's going to say, "You're out of your mind." I mean, I really, this was a challenge that I had to push past my comfort level. And I just thought, if this guy's willing to pay me $25,000 to fix this problem, I'll do it. And the guy looked at me and said, "You better get started."
Wow.
And I went back to my shop. I called a lot of the other mobile guys in town that were my friends and said, "Hey, I got a challenge. I got these four semi trucks. I'm going to pay you very well, but we got to work all night." Okay. And so I went back to the shop. I grabbed her gear, grabbed her product, went back down there, had ladders. We spent until 4:30 in the morning getting these trucks presentable for the Kenworth and Peterbilt International Truck Show for the whole world, for dealerships, for the dealers. And I wanted to get paid, so I told everybody to split. And that was about 4:30 in the morning, right? So I got in one of the cabs of the trucks and just crashed until the executives showed up, and they're knocking on the door, and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm sleeping. I'm waiting to get paid." And they said, "How the hell did you pull this off? These trucks look like you just painted them." And I said, "Thank you. I appreciate that, but I want to get paid." They said, "Give us about 30 minutes. We'll be right back." So they came back with Bellagio, like those little carry bags they give you when you check in, full of cash, 25,000 in hundreds. And I opened the bag and I said, "Hey, thanks for this opportunity. If you ever need anything in the future, keep me posted." And he says, "Hold on one second. The president of Peterbilt wants to meet you." So the guy comes over, he's probably in his mid 40s, maybe early 50s, says, "I don't know how you pulled this off, but I have a proposition for you. I want to fly you to Denton, Texas, and I want you to teach my guys on the assembly line where they build the trucks how to do this." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "We'll send you an email, and then you send us an offer letter back of what you need for your time, and we'll get the ball rolling." I said, "Okay, no problem." A week later, got an email, sent him back, talked to my father on the phone. And I said, "Dad, this is unbelievable. I can't believe this is happening." He said, "Son, let me tell you the difference in the world between the people who make the biggest money to the people who make the littlest money." He said, "You are now getting paid for what you know, not what you do. And so now your value has escalated and you become an expert, and people are willing to pay for that value." So that goes back to your original quote that you start off the podcast. I've been writing a book for the last 2.5 years called The Millionaire Detailer. It's 22 chapters. And the name of this chapter is, do you get paid for what you know, or do you get paid for what you do? And then I tell the Peterbilt story.
Wow.
Now, I told this on Van Wiki and people loved it. This was after I told the Van Wiki story. And what I started to realize was that I was onto something, that I could create my own brand and create solutions. And I was working with two guys in North Carolina that were master organic chemists, blenders. And I told them I needed their help because I was going to start my own product line. And that was in 1998 that I started building it. I didn't release the brand Glossit until SEMA, which is the largest automotive convention for manufacturers in Las Vegas once a year. Until 2007, I showed up at SEMA with my first booth. And I was going up against giants like McGuire's and Mothers. I mean, these companies have been around for 60, 70, 80 years. And I decided that I was going to take a stab at this and create the best detailing chemicals and car care products that people could buy. But my play on that was to film content in 2007 on YouTube. If you go on my YouTube channel, which is glossit.tv, and you go to the oldest videos, you'll see that I was one of the first guys on YouTube teaching people what I did for Peterbilt for free. And this is where my journey began with Glossit, you know. But there's a lot of relationships of, starting this company in 1994 in Las Vegas. And this was a journey for me to build. And what I learned very quickly in Las Vegas, it was a big town, but it was a small network. And what I realized is that I got close to a lot of casino executives and business owners and people who helped make Las Vegas what it is today. And I learned that relationships are currency, right? I learned by having these relationships, I could build resources and leverage to build my business. And I did this very quickly. And if you think about the internet, we had Google and we had, MySpace and all these different things, a way of promoting, but I knew nothing about direct marketing, zero. And everything I did was pure hustle, you know. I knew a lot of the people that worked in the car dealerships. Brad Lee never met me in person, but I knew who Brad was because
Wow.
I did work for Dan Tobin, who passed away about 14 years ago. And Dan used to send me all the Rolls Royces and Bentleys to fix. And I remember when Brad worked, I think it was for the Dodge store or another store, and I had seen him doing his thing. I knew who he was. because this town was small. We all knew each other in the car
Wow.
network. And then years and years later, Brad never remembered meeting me. He didn't know exactly, he heard of me, but he didn't know me personally. And I said, my man, I remember you. You got into training people on DVDs on how to sell cars.
What a blast from the past. Were you thinking about getting into the business when your father owned an auto part, right? An international auto part, one of the first
So,
ones
yeah,
in
that's kind of an
Kansas
interesting
City?
story. So, my father was working for a company called Curtis Nuts and Bolts. They're still in business today. They supply all your fasteners and your bolts for all the automotive industry, for dealerships and auto body shops. And at 22 years old, he became a district manager. He loved sales, and he saw an opportunity that foreign cars were flooding into the United States, and said, well, if these foreign cars are coming, guess what they're going to need? They're going to need parts. And so he decided to
Wow.
take a risk when he was 24 years old to start a company called Autometrics in a suburb of Philadelphia called Westchester. That's where I was born and raised.
Yeah.
And he started off with one store, and that first store was, I think, 77 or 78. And by 82, 83, he grew it to 40 stores. He was the
Wow.
first Bosch distributor for Bosch fuel injection, which is used commonly through a lot of companies, and Bosch is a huge company. And at the same time, he acquired the real estate for each one of his stores. So as he would build a franchise or sell a franchise or was a corporate store, he would try to buy the real estate. And then about 83, 84, he exited out. He had a partner named Alan who helped him scale this, to work with him at Curtis Nuts and Bolts. And he decided that they were going to separate. He was going to have Alan keep the auto part business, and my dad was going to keep all the real estate. And so my father went into commercial development of like industrial parks and shopping centers, and building custom spec homes. So he was an investor in real estate. So he took the money that he made from the Autometrics and then leveraged it into what's called H&L Enterprises, and he built that into a 35 or $40 million company back in 84, 85. So I've always been around a person that's driven. I've always been around him. When he had the auto parts stores and I was a kid, I would go in. I remember when IBM showed up in 81 and said, hey, we're going to build you a system to track all your inventory. And you remember those old big paper printers that were
Yeah.
huge, like gigantic? So he was the first automotive company to work with IBM to develop a way to track inventory for all the auto parts, you know? And the crazy part, my father to this day, if I ask him, hey, Pops, what's the part number for a 1972 Volkswagen Beetle, right? Distributor cap. And he knows it.
Holy
He
cow.
freaking knows the whole number. He still remembers it, you know? But I think that we're a
Wow.
product of our environment. You know, when you grow up in an environment where, you know, my dad's dad, my grandfather was a steel worker in Philadelphia. His mom did hair out of the house or the basement. And my father decided that he didn't want to live that way. He was driven. He said, I'm going to succeed. I'm going to have a better life. He wasn't afraid to take risk. He wasn't afraid to go figure it out. Now, I would say that my father never sat me down and showed me the blueprint. But what I did is I was around him all the time to watch his behavior, his choices, and his actions. And so I think this was a big influence in my life, that made a big difference, because what it taught me is he wanted me to get in the business with him, but he wanted me to pay my dues. And I said, listen, man, this is not what I want to do. I love cars. And in 1990, I was living in Boston and I was a sales manager. I was 20 years old and I was running a division of offices for fire safety equipment out of Boston. And the company ended up going under because the owner of the company out of Lexington, Kentucky was not an honest dude. And they were selling halon extinguishers, you know, like for your house or your home. And I was running an office and the company went under. And I remember one of my customers owned a car dealership, and he had just bought a new building. And I went to him and said, hey, I'm no longer working for this fire safety company, and I need to make some side money. And in college, I used to detail cars where everybody else worked a 40-hour week. I would detail cars, right? So I said, hey, this is a way for me to figure out my next step. I said, hey, can I use part of your dealership, the back area? And it turned into a business. I ended up doing work for Herb Chambers, and everybody knows who Herb Chambers is. Started Xerox, and
Wow.
became friends with him very quickly at a young age. And he trusted me with his cars, and his buddies trusted me with their cars. and I'm running this business out of Boston. I'm doing work for car dealerships and running cars back and forth and doing their used car recons and new car deliveries. And I was doing this, but one of the things I hated the most was the winters, because every winter would come, it was brutal. And it was really hard to operate. And I had all these guys at 20 years old, young kids working for me in these car dealerships. And the problem with the car dealerships is they don't pay you on time and they don't pay you correctly. And I remember at the time, his name was Kevin. He was working for me, and he was like my go-to right-hand guy. And I said, I have an opportunity to move to Las Vegas with a girlfriend, and I'm wanting to sell the business. Do you want to buy it? So his parents took a second mortgage on their house and bought and helped him fund the business. And so, long story short, I came out to Vegas, really liked it. I saw the opportunity here, and that was in late '93, and decided that I was going to give a stab at the detailing business in Las Vegas. And in order to build relationships and clients, I went to all the auto body shops, all the dealerships. And so what I did was I said, hey, if you ever get a black car and you can't figure it out and you got a problem, call me and I'll help you. Just all I ask is you refer your clients to come through the dealership. And that's basically how I started to build relationships with Fletcher Jones. Everybody knows that car dealership. They're huge out of California, Nevada. And I started to work with some car collectors. And next thing you know it, I'm doing work for the Godin family, the Fletcher family. I'm starting to meet and greet different owners of exotic car collections. And I was the go-to guy if you had a black car in Vegas. And this was in '94. And the journey started there, where I was running back and forth with car dealerships. I had, I think, 12 or 13 guys. And I was hungry. And on top of that, I had a real estate company. I was an investor doing flips. I had an audio video business. We did Crestron, which was available back then for home theaters and homes. And I don't think I ever really slept.
Wow.
I think that I was just driven. And when my father came out and we went out to Shadow Creek, where Steve Wynn lived, and Mark Shore and all the people that were close to him out there, was a oasis in the desert. Steve trusted me so much, and Mark Shore, that I had access and keys to their garages, where I could go in and pick up the cars and then bring it back to the shop and then deliver them back. And all the security guys knew me. They were super cool with me. But I had built that trust with these type of people, the Marnell family. There's just a lot of different people. The Fertitas, started at the stations. I used to do work for their dad and their attorneys, and I worked on everybody's cars. And this was without any direct marketing. This was just straight hustle. Straight hustle. And there's so much to my journey in Vegas. If you think about it, I'm probably the oldest business in the city of Las Vegas doing what I've been doing, and I continue to do it. Even with the brand today, we have the studios. And I think you and I talked when we were hanging out with Brad. And, sorry about that, guys. That's my dog in the background. Monty, come here. So, I think that the biggest thing I always tell people is that you got to be really clear about what you want, and don't listen to what everybody else has to say, because you have to remember, people do what they know, right? And so when they have a bad experience where something didn't work out or they didn't get the results they were looking for, it doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means they gave up. And the difference that I've noticed surrounding myself with successful people is that they always keep their eye on the ball. They're really clear about what they want, and they understand what it takes, the discipline, the commitment, the focus, right, in order to build this. And I can tell you, back in '07, '08, I had a lot of real estate. I over leveraged myself. My father is very experienced. He told me in '07, dump everything you got.
Wow.
Get rid of it, because you're going to take a bath. And I lost, millions and millions of dollars, because I told my old man, I know this is going to work. And he said, yeah, but you can't control what's about to happen. And it took me till 2012 to get out of that hole. But Glossit was already in progress. Glossit was already scaling. Glossit was already growing. I started doing our first training classes for people in the industry that wanted to learn the art of what I do at the level I do it at. My first class, I had people flying from Bermuda and Puerto Rico coming to just train with me, because they wanted to see what my operation was like and how it worked and moved, and they wanted to be, and they wanted to copy, in essence, to be able to duplicate it in their environment. And I said, I think I'm really on to something here besides the products. I think there is a need for people to know what the steps look like, right? And what kind of plan of action and what execution looks like. And when things go bad, it's not bad. It's just information about what you need to change. And I think there's a lot of things, a lot of people out there. I mean, what we played 30 years ago is the same game today. It's no different. Everybody says, no, it's the economy, it's the president, it's this, it's that. Folks, that's a bunch of bullshit, right? Yes, things do change, but that's where you have to adapt to the change. You have to come up with a game plan. You got to get around people that have done what you want to do, right? Learn from what actions and steps they took in order to get where they're at. It's really it's not hard, the process, but you know what's hard? It's staying in it. Don't quit, right? And so, moving forward today, we've just hired another 5 people onto the company because when I attended, it's funny, everybody knows Grant Cardone, but when I attended Grant Cardone's class back before COVID, I think it was 19, it was like a mastermind. You know how Grant runs those boot camps, and I attended one and I was a VIP client. And, I really wanted proximity. I wanted to get close to Grant because, again, I talk about getting close to people and having conversations will give you a lot of information. So I paid the $20,000, which was $10,000 a ticket for my wife and I got to be in a private room with like 50 people with Grant where he does the Q&As.
Mm.
And the craziest part, when I was sitting in that room, I was waiting for my opportunity to ask Grant a very, very specific question, and it didn't go well. And I stood up, and I was probably 2 or 3 feet away from Grant. And he said, "What's your question?" Because everybody else in the room was petting his ego and about how fantastic and great he was and what a pleasure it is to meet him. But I cut the chase. I just went right to the question. The question was, so Grant, let me ask you a question. So when I read all your books, you talk about how you're always stuck at the $2 to $3 million a year while you're trying to build a business. What happened, or who did you have to become in order to go from the 2 or 3 million to $100 million a year company? Because it happened pretty quick. And so my question is, who'd you have to become? What had to change? And he looked at me and he said, "What do you do?" And I told him, I said, "I have an automotive brand. I'm a real estate investor. I'm a coach, a mentor in the automotive space." And he goes, "Sell it. It's not scalable." And he shut my mic off. And I had all these people sitting around the table, the luncheon, looking at him like, why are you being an asshole? And then Elena came over to my wife and I when we were done at luncheon. And she said, "Listen, I want to apologize. I think it was a great question. He's just having a bad day. And I'm sorry about that. That was inappropriate. And what can we do to make it better?" I said, "I'm not interested." And she said, "Okay, I respect that." And then the OG of direct marketing walks over to me, Frank Kern, and says, "You got like 20 minutes?" I said, "Sure, Frank." He said, "Let's go outside. Let's have a chat. Do you mind if I smoke?" I said, "No, I smoke cigars." He says, "Great. Let's go get a cigar. Let's sit outside. I want to learn more about your company."
Wow.
And he says, "I want to bring you on as a client." I said, "How are you going to do that?" He said, "Well, I partnered up to do direct marketing with Grant. I brought my book of business out here from San Diego. And I think that you're an interesting guy. And I think there's a lot here. And I want to know more. And I would like to bring you on as a client and help you on the direct marketing side, because I think with proper lead generation and ad spend, you could scale the shit out of this. Because while you were talking to Grant, I was Googling you. I was checking you out. And I thought, this guy's got something. So I went back to Vegas, and then a week later, I set up a meeting with him and Wayne Helena. Now, Wayne Helena was the person that ran the direct marketing for Grant. If you remember Wayne, he was a big Dominican guy, big statue. And I didn't know Wayne. And I had a conversation with him by Zoom. And Frank said, "You're in good hands. He runs the whole direct marketing side. He's my right hand. I'm going to be involved. And we want to build you as a customer. And we'd like you to be a testimonial." So I got to know Wayne. And Wayne quickly identified some things that we could be doing in the direct marketing space that could be a game changer. And this is right before COVID, right?
Wow.
And so Wayne and I built a really good, close relationship. We talked after hours. We were on the same page. And I get a call, like that was February. And Wayne says, "Hey, I got some bad news for you." I said, what? He goes, I just got instruction from Sherry that we're going to shut down this company and I got to fire 73 people. You remember that on YouTube. So
Yeah,
Brad didn't
yeah.
actually do that. Wayne Helena did it. And Wayne said, after I'm done letting these people go, I would like to fly to Las Vegas and meet with you because I like to become part of your operations. So he flew out to Vegas. We spent a couple days going back and forth. And he said, in fact, I'm going to bring one of our best media buyers that does all of our media, and I'm going to bring him into the conversation. He would like to come aboard because you're already working with him when you were in Grant's office. So I picked up about 4 people with Wayne that worked for Wayne because Wayne was the head guy. And I had some of the best talent working for me on the direct marketing side. And Wayne and I went to work. And Wayne worked for me for about a year and a half. He went on vacation to see some family in Colombia. And we got a call that he had passed away and nobody knew why. He had sleep apnea. He stopped breathing and he was only 34 years old. So we lost Wayne, but we still maintain Jesse, who Jesse is today our CMO of the company. He is a partner in all levels of marketing, and he's what I call my Alex Formosi. The guy walks, talks, doesn't look like he's a gym rat, but he's just brilliant, just a brilliant guy. And so what's happened, and that was in 2019. Jesse's been with me since, and now he's a CMO. But what's happened since is that we become the marketing machine for the automotive space for anything to do with appearance. And we've perfected direct marketing, ads, lead generation, sales process. And right before Wayne had gone down that trip, we went to Mr. Bradley's office. I brought my videographer, Austin, which I think you've met a couple times in the lounge, the cigar lounge. And we brought Wayne and we sat down with Brad and we started brainstorming. And I think that's when I met you, Jay, when we'd go by to chit chat and get stuck in Brad's office and be a prisoner for about 2 hours. Not productive, a lot of bullshit and joke telling and a lot of roasting. But one of the things I always tell people, and I think Brad has some good insight, is that if you want to get close to people, bring value. Don't ask them for anything. Ask them how you can help them. And I remember Brad telling me in this conversation, he said, listen, I got, the black Raptor he has. He says, listen, my black Raptor, I'm going out of town. I'm going to leave it at the airport of valet. And if you could pick it up and clean it up for me, I'd really appreciate it. And I'd like to see what you do. When I got the vehicle, it looked like somebody had taken like a dirty brush and wiped the whole truck in it. So I sent him pictures and I said, Brad, what's going on with your paint? He goes, yeah, man, it's jacked up. And I'm thinking I'm going to have to paint the truck. It's really bad. So basically, I had my team go through it and made it look like a brand new paint job and then delivered it back to the airport, let them know, hey, I parked your truck at the airport. They got your valet ticket, took a picture of it. And as soon as he got off the plane and saw the truck, he about lost it and said, you got to be fucking joking me. This does not look like the truck even the day I bought it. And he said, where are you? And I said, I'm in Fuegos. He said, dude, I got to come by and talk to you because this is some shit. This is something I've never seen. And what'd you put on the paint? Because it looks like fresh paint.
Wow.
I said, that's my ceramic coating that I manufacture because that's what we do. And then that's how my relationship started with Brad, having a conversation, showing my value, offering something to show him, hey, I want to invest in this relationship. I want to get close to somebody that has the skill sets that I don't have. What does Brad always say? You need what? Mindset, skill set, and habits. Correct?
Absolutely.
And then so and that's why you saw me around on and off with Brad, because Brad was really curious about who I am and what I do. And we just finished a brand new Raptor R. It's going on YouTube this week. And we just customized it for him. And he was super excited. In fact, he texts me every freaking day. How's it look?
Wow.
Is it badass? Does it look military? Brad. And
This coding though, did the idea of it come about in your mid 20s and your early 20s when you were working on these opportunities? For example, the 4 big trucks that came before the consulting, those semi trucks,
yeah, for
that was,
Peterbilt.
yes. Did it start back then, the idea
No,
of
I think that what we always talk about in the industry, and that's why I've always been a pioneer and OG in the industry, is that we call paint correction. So what is paint correction? Paint correction is multiple steps of polishing, cutting, and finishing. You're using polishing abrasives to level the imperfections like the swirl marks and the water spots and the scratches. But I took it to a whole different level where I did things a lot of people said couldn't be done. And I was one of the pioneers back in 2007 on YouTube showing how this worked, and nobody could believe that this was even possible. And this is kind of what set me on the map, is that 95% of what we do here is in the prep. The cherry on the cake is the coating. So if your foundation, just like business, is shitty, how do you think the rest of your business is going to work? Right? And so we teach these guys proper prep. So the goal is here is that when we get a vehicle into our facility, we always want to make it look like in the prep, right, that we already did it and then code it. And so this has kind of been my trademark in the industry, is that I've always been the go-to guy to learn this process. I've always been the go-to. I call it a boot camp, where you spend 2 days in our facility and you learn hands-on on real customers with real cars in a real environment, not a classroom. And so kind of this is what set me apart in the training of what we do. But what people don't realize, what I started to realize, is that, yeah, I made money with hustle, but imagine if I got into direct marketing and learned how marketing works, how to build a tribe, how, the audience, how to come up with an offer, call to action. There's just so many moving parts, right, to marketing. And so, for me, when I got proximity to Grant, think about it. Grant and I had a blowout. How did that turn out in the end for me? Awesome.
Pretty good.
Because what people don't realize, when we go and spend $10,000, $20,000, you don't have to spend that kind of money. You can go for $500 or $300. But guys, why do I go to those events? Is to build relationships. It's about the people I meet there. I mean, I just had New Year's Eve with guys that were sitting at my table, and that happened with Grant, and their name is Matt and Blair, Williams Corporation. Guess what they delivered last year in brand new house construction that they developed and built? $550 million with a net profit of $18 million. They have their own real estate fund. And when I met them, they were just starting to scale. And today, one is 30 and one is 31. Can you believe that? Now, do you think that I ever would have met those guys if I didn't show up that day? Do you think that I would ever met Wayne Helena or Frank Kern or Jesse to work with me? No. So do you think that that $20,000 was worth me showing up?
Well, not to mention that if you're doing that truck, then you got your answer to that question. Because that person actually was the answer to that question, which is, to me, it comes full circle.
Yeah.
Our buddy was the answer to that question that you asked that person, that the light got shut off, because that's what got that from that. My curiosity is around, what does your dad think at this point with all this?
Well,
Is
it
he
was
still with
funny.
us?
So when I first brought my dad out to Steve Wynn's Shadow Creek, and I said, Dad, you got to check this out. This place is amazing. And as we were pulling into Steve's property and we were in the driveway, he had a Rolls Royce that I was picking up, and I was like, hey, Dad, he had nice cars, so he wasn't like a stranger to it. But we were standing in the driveway, and he started getting kind of emotional, and he looked at me and he said, when you grew up in Westchester, you were Rich Light's son. When you moved to Las Vegas, you became Rich Light.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
Hmm.
So what happened was I built my own identity outside the influence of my father's success. I moved to the desert. I burned the ships. I moved cross country, didn't have a friend, not a family member, not a soul. I moved 3,000 miles to Vegas with a dream and determination. A lot of people that get around me say, God, this guy's intense. But who have you not been around with who's been obsessed with success, who's not intense? That's just determination. That's just drive. That's just grit, And I think that one of the first moves, and I got to tell you that what really helped change the game for me was Garrett J. White.
Oh, wow.
In 2015, I had made some really bad business choices, but the reason I made the bad business choices was because I personally was not stable in my personal life. In business, I was focused, but I was unbalanced. And I remember watching a video ad that he had put on Facebook, thinking that it was UFC, kind of fighting video. And I wanted to watch this guy because you know how Garrett's intense. And I was watching his videos walking across the bridge, if you remember the ad for Warrior, where he's by the MGM and he's talking about, are you full of shit? Are you full of shit? Or you just stop fucking lying? Do you remember that was his like play in marketing?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, and
You
he's
remember
so
that?
many mentees have come out of him.
And so I got to be around Chris Cohn and Sean
Oh
Whalen
wow.
and
Yeah.
Satema Gala. Satema's moving to Vegas. He's in Vegas this week. He's moving his whole operation. And so when I went through Warrior Week was the hell training that Garrett created. It's like Navy SEAL kind of training for small business, for business owners.
Didn't they have a fight
Satem,
club?
what's that?
Didn't
Yeah.
they have a
Well,
fight club at the time?
if you go on YouTube and you look for Warrior Week 23, you'll see me boxing. You'll see me knocking out 3
That's when
people.
they used to do that. Holy
Yes,
shit.
we did. That was real. And so I wanted to fight Satema because I was so upset with the way him and I were getting along. He was just a tough guy and he was trying to break me down. He's a Samoan. He's a big guy, ex-Patriot, NFL, Super Bowl. And I just remember I just wanted to, and I told Garrett, I said, I want to fight this guy. He said, it's not happening. It's not happening. I was angry. And so what they were trying to do is we spent 7 days. Rick Steele, the king of blinds in Arizona. Everybody knows Rick Steele, right? He's the king of blinds. He started out his apartment. He was in my class. The guy, David, who started job or hotels.com. And so what Garrett did is he found all these different individuals. You show up as strangers, you leave as brothers.
Yeah,
And when I went through that course, I remember calling my dad and explaining him what this was. And he said, do you know how much it is? And I said, I have no idea. I have to go through an interview with Sam, who's his right-hand guy. I had to go through an interview with Garrett. And then they basically say, are you in or are you out? And I said, well, you haven't even told me what it costs. He said, if you have to ask me how much your life is worth, you're out. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you in or are you out? And I said, I'm in, but I don't know what I'm signing up for. He says, great. It's $25,000. How do you want to pay for that? And I was like, holy shit. So I called my father. I said, I just signed up for this madman's training and I have no idea what I got myself into. And my father said to me, if this works for you, this was a deal. If it doesn't work for you, you spent a lot of fucking money.
yeah.
And we're going to find out if it was worth it. Because if you don't change something, son, this isn't going to change. You're going to continue down the path. And, living in Vegas is a party city, right? So I went through this training and Satema was my coach.
Wow.
I had to have weekly calls with him, accountability. I mean, we did all these different types of exercises with like no sleep, 24 hours up, 3 20-minute naps. I mean, it was intense. And I'll tell you what, I came out of that a different person. I came out of that with such clarity and accountability that what I realized, all leaders, if you're going to be a leader, own your shit, be clear about what you want and ask yourself this question: who do I have to become to go to the next level? Because a lot of people think that who they are is going to change the reality. It really doesn't work that way. We get to a level of comfort and we're like, hey, this is good, right? And then all of a sudden the people around us that are fucking working are going to a different level. And then we're going, how the fuck did that happen? Well, that happened because you lost commitment, you lost discipline, you lost focus, you lost clarity. And I wear this band on my wrist, which is Wake Up Warrior, because this represents the choice in life that I made to get around. I mean, Sean Whalen was a scrawny, skinny guy when I met
Yeah.
him. No beard, kind of awkward, he's not the guy you see today. Chris Cohn, huge real estate guy out of Utah, you know. I mean, I got to build brothers. What was great is that I had something in common with these guys. And I just got off the phone before I came to this podcast with Dito. He's one of the top headhunters out of Boston, Massachusetts. And he just came out in October. I have calls with Blaze. I talk to Rick maybe a couple times a year. But the thing is that we all share a common thread. And we bleed the same, we sweat the same, we cry the same. And so we call it being raw and real, which means to understand and identify like what's going on in your life. Don't bullshit yourself, right? And whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. Just figure it out. Just keep moving, right? We called it low gear. So we went through all these physical activities. Garrett was trying to set up scenes where there was one night where we thought we went to dinner, we finally got a fucking break. And I remember going back to the sand and surf in Laguna, and we're like, finally, we're going to get a night's sleep. And Satama looks at us and says, hey, walk down this path. And we're like, oh God, here we go. And he said, are you in or are you out? And we didn't know what we were committing to. And if he says, if you're out, the van's at the top of the hill. We got your bags inside the van for everybody. And if you're out, we'll drop you off at the airport or the nearest transportation. But are you in? And so I remember that night where we got into rowboats and went a mile off the coast and blindfolded us and said, you got to figure out how to get back to shore. And you got to do it with a partner. You're not doing it by yourself. And you both have to figure out how to get back. And I swear to God, I grew up surfing. I could feel shit hitting my legs. I'm like, this has got to be like those little sand sharks. But, you know, as soon as we got back into shore and we're on the beach, now they got to stand in the water. If you've ever seen the Navy SEAL exercise, we were all armed up like this.
Yeah.
And we had to stay in a line. Nobody could break. It took us 2 hours and the waves were crashing on us and people were separating. And then we're dragging each other up and down the beach. I mean, I said, what is this for? And I was so angry that night and I went to bed very angry. But you didn't realize until you left this journey with Garrett that he was teaching you that in life, there are always challenges. There's the dark. Inside the dark is the light. People think the answers are in the light. But when you're in the dark, what do you do? How do you come to that resolution? How do you figure out what you're going to do? And a lot of people get stuck in the dark. And so he was using these exercises to say, hey, this is what happens in the real world. This is why you keep sedating yourself and fucking up and drinking. And there was guys doing cocaine in this group and like just fucking lost and no balance in their family life. And what was crazy is everybody in this class was married except me. I was the only single guy, you know, and I understood the party side. I understood the unbalanced side. And what Garrett did is he created and gamified life and business, right? Where he brought them together. And the guy has been on a lot of different podcasts. I even went on to do the King's Council, which is like a mastermind where you pay, you know, $75,000 to $100,000 to become part of a small group of like 15 guys. And Garrett will handpick you. And, you know, I went through different levels of training, you know, and I have a lot of gratitude because the guy has changed the world for married, small, you know, for businessmen. But I think the biggest lesson here for people to learn the podcast is if you're not investing in yourself, why should people invest in you? Why should people come work for you, right? If you don't know how to lead yourself, how the fuck are you going to lead other people? It's not possible, you know? And so what I realized, we were doing, I'll tell you, a drill we were doing the first day I was there. We were running up Laguna Hills, they're pretty steep. And we had an 80-pound backpack that we had to run up and run down. And I'm a competitive guy. So I'm like, shit, I'm going to run up the hill and I'm going to run down and I'm going to be the first guy to finish. So I did. I ran up, I ran down, and I got my ass chewed out. And I said, what the fuck? Satama's screaming at me. What, you know, what are you doing? And then what I learned is, he said, see how you're showing up right now? You're showing up as an I, not a we. And when you got down the bottom, you should have dropped your pack and ran up the hill and helped your team. So this is how you're showing up in your life. This is a fucking problem. And that was a lesson the first day, that I wasn't operating as a team. I wasn't working as a true leader. I was operating as a selfish motherfucker.
How
You know,
did you take it?
I mean, I got through it. You know, I have never been a quitter. The boxing match was fun for me because I was so angry that every time they put me in the ring, I knocked somebody out, you know? And by the time I had ended I think the reflection was I had to get outside the experience in a few months and get back into reality. And then I had a lot of gratitude for the lessons. There was a lot of lessons I can go into from this experience. But what I learned is how to lead myself, how to lead myself. What does that mean? It means, how do I show up every day? If I'm going to ask you to be part of my team, I've got to represent everything I ask you to do. I got to do. I can't just point the finger and be like, hey, I'm paying you 150 grand a year, figure it out, right? It doesn't work like that.
Hmm.
A team is not an I, a team is a we. And I think that a lot of people that are out in the business world understand true leadership comes from showing people and coaching and showing them the steps. Like we talk about onboarding in business. How many companies really onboard? There's some great companies out there, but they have really good onboarding, right? And they really take time to cultivate culture within inside their company, right? Because when we see people in front of the camera and then we see them behind, how many times have you seen the difference, Jay? Are there's some people that
Huge.
there's a big difference, right? And there's some people out there that are the same. I did Gold Rush, the exotic car rallies. I've been doing it since '08. I met Andy Priscilla from First Form. I met him in 2015 or 14 on Gold Rush from San Diego to Miami, and my son was my co-pilot. And I remember being at an event the first day, and I was talking to his wife today, Heather. And long story short, Andy thought that I was hitting on his wife. He wanted to fight me. He wanted to fight me, and he was serious. He was mad. And she looked at him and said, "This man has done nothing." I asked him, "What is Glossit?" And I wanted him to learn more about his company. And it almost got physical. We were in each other's faces. And an hour later, he came and apologized. And we became friends, shook hands, and hugged. And I saw him at Driven with
Albert?
not last year, but the year, I think it was a couple years ago. And we caught up and we were laughing about that day. You know what I mean? He's a passionate guy, he's a driven guy. And we would see each other through the car world because he's a big car guy. And a lot of people don't know that. He loves cars. And I remember when Andy was working with Jason Applebaum on direct marketing back in 15, because Jason was on the rally with us. And a lot of people know Jason Applebaum. He's like one of the originators, young guys, a little bit crazy, him and Heather. And he was doing some of the direct marketing for Andy at the time before Andy brought it in house. And it's so funny that, you go on these different journeys, you meet these successful people, right? And you watch them blow up, but you knew them when they were figuring it out. I mean, look at Andy. He lived in a store for 10 years and slept on a mattress that was pissed all over. Didn't make a fucking dime. But you know what he never did? He never quit. He kept on with his pursuit. He knew that he was going to make it. He didn't have a time clock saying this is going to be the day. He just said, I'm going to keep going until I get it figured out. I'm going to keep going until I make it work.
Are you the Paul Mitchell of cars? Like I think of Paul Mitchell, the hair, the product,
Yeah.
he went everywhere with the hairstylist and he did the hair with them and showed the hairstylist how to do their hair of the clients.
I've never
That's what
really
I
had
feel
anybody.
like Glossip.
I've never really had anybody tell me that's an interesting like parable that you're using here. I don't know. I was never sleeping in my car. I'm not gonna lie. I never slept. I don't have one of those stories where my car was repossessed, my house was repossessed, I slept in my car. Like I don't have any of those kind of stories. I never got that low,
I just think
right?
maybe it's because I'm a lay person as it relates to detail and whatnot. But when I think of Glossit, and I hear stories and I know, we both know Brad, I've seen the pictures and I hear about the car and I see that is all um like I see that and then I hear all these all this all this experience around the product. I think of a recent interview I watched of Paul Mitchell explaining a story how he would go to all these different, instead of shops, it'd be like salons.
Salons,
He
right?
would show the people how to do the hair. And it's like you talked about your process and 95% preparation. It's like, and you're that consultant. I could see you being all, at every location of all these shops in the US, showing them how to gloss it. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like what you just said about all these great people, it's me getting to see you blow up. That's how I feel because you're like the Paul Mitchell of auto detail.
Yeah, I think that for me it's kind of an interesting story. I think that I was always looking for the answers, but my problem was I was looking in the wrong places. I was asking the wrong questions. I was building the wrong relationships. And I think that one thing that I don't do is I don't flex. right? I think that success shows up by your results, not by what you have. It's about what you offered, how you help people accomplish what took you 20 years to figure out. And so I think that's why, we build a relationship. We have a great platform in Lightspeed. It's called glossuniversity.com, where we teach people on the wrap industry, dent removal, window tinting, detailing. But you know what I really teach them? I teach them the business side. See, what happens is a lot of guys can become an artist in what they do, but they don't know how to build a team. They don't know how to market. They don't have a sales process. They don't have lead generation, right? And I think I call it business in a box, right? Where we've created this blueprint, and if you're willing to do the fucking work and follow my steps, what took me 20 years, you can do in 2. I mean, last year, I think that we took, 5 guys to $1 million in revenue,
Wow.
by them applying our steps and being engaged and connected to us. I had one guy a year ago, Christmas. His name is Bam. He's on social media. Filipino guy, pretty funny. He's following us on social media. He wants to come to one of my classes. It's $4,000 for 2 days. Doesn't have the money, borrows money, and goes through the class. And I thought, about all the students, we had 12 students in that class. I thought, this guy isn't going to make it. And boy, did he shock me. He was living, I found out after the class, he had been living in his truck for 1.5 years. He
Wow.
didn't have a home. And within 3 months, Bam found a customer he'd worked on his car, got him to believe in Bam. The guy had a piece of dirt in Atlanta, built a building for Bam. And then within 6 months, Bam had 6 employees. Right? That's the kind of stuff I like, is knowing that I can give you and teach you my skill sets to make more than just a living, and you can do it in a short period of time if you follow the steps.
Mm.
And I'm really proud of Bam. And then I introduced him to Ed and Van Wiki, because Ed lives in Atlanta. So now Ed opened him to different relationships. Then I did work on Miss Elliott, the rapper's car. We did a whole video series on that. And I invited Bam and a couple of those guys out to participate. How do you think that helped his business?
Hugely.
He's booked for months for after that experience. Because again, it came down to, he didn't have the right skill sets, he didn't have the right mindset, and he didn't have the right habits. And so what we do with Brad at Lightspeed is we create this curriculum, and we add every month new information about not do the work side, and I took some of the training with Garrett and I incorporated it into 90-day targets, not goals. Numbers matter. On social media, likes don't equal cash. And there's 5 of us that are on my team that contributed content on the platform, not because they wanted to make money, because they wanted to help people succeed. And now we're moving on to going in and acquiring other facilities that are stuck at like $500,000 or $1 million a year. And we're going to show them how to double their numbers in 12 months. But to do that, we're going to bring in our systems and processes. We're going to bring in our lead generation, our marketing, our whole template. And all we're going to do is say, hey, we're going to take 20% ownership of your company, but we're going to launch you to the next level. Now, to be able to create that, behind me, you see these whiteboards, which I have in all of my offices. I have a new team player who which I can't talk about at this point, that's on my team, and a lot of people know him. He's been in the office this week. He has a lot of experience in scaling multiple locations in different states in a different type of business, and he's now on my team. And we're going to open up 10 stores in the next 2 years, and we're going to do this. So we've been org charting out what the team needs to look like, roles and responsibilities, writing the hats for everybody. So as we scale, we don't have chaos. But he opened up 47 locations in the business that he was in. 47. He exited for over $20 million cash. Right? And so he's got experience I don't have. So I'm bringing him in. And now we're working with another company. You guys can check it out. It's called Product Genius. Imagine having AI when you go onto an e-commerce website, Jay, that's your personal shopping concierge when you're trying to figure out what you want. And AI is your shopping assistant. Now imagine if I plug that into products and services. Imagine being on a website and looking at a product, and all of a sudden you put certain keywords in, and AI goes on the internet and finds a video for that product and populates it on the page so that you can make a better buying decision. I'm now on a board of directors for this company, and they've raised over $200 million. And now I'm building a relationship. I had a phone call with their programmers this morning and my team about how we're going to scale our B2C with Glossy.com and how we're going to take the AI technology through Klaviyo and email and drip campaigns. This thing is going to be epic. But we've already seen tens of thousands of dollars in sales in like 4 days off of this AI. And this is something that will be released to the public in a year, but they're building their teams out because let me tell you what happened. If you go on the internet to Google and you put Product Genius, they had a funnel that if you wanted or curious about how this AI technology can help your Shopify or e-commerce store, they had to shut it down in 5 days. They had over 125,000 people, businesses interested. They don't have the team to fulfill this. So Glossit is now a beta tester in the automotive space. We're the only one. And now they just asked me today to be on the board of directors.
Wow.
Because I have ideas and insight on the marketing side of how this, when they launch it, can really, really boogie. And so now I'm going to be on the board of directors, right? But think about it. I started off what? Washing cars for $6.95. Now you guys understand that was a hook that I did in order to get people in the door. That was my lead generation, right? So I could get them in the door and have a conversation about what we could do for the car. That was my lead generation. Today, we spend, I don't know, like 15, 20, 30, $40,000 a month, but we're bringing in $500,000 a month in actual revenue off an ad spend. That's a pretty good return. And then we have spreadsheets where we can actually look at how many leads to how many estimates to how many closed deals and what was our average ticket. And today, this week, our average ticket is $5,000 per car. Now I become a marketing guy, right? Because now I understand the power of marketing. People always say, what's more important, marketing or sales? Marketing. Because without marketing, you have no sales. And now I'm working with another company in Cancun that I'm a member of that's a multi-billion-dollar company that does all their lead generation out of the airport. Hey, do you want to go to this free show? Da 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 da. Just take this private tour and of this property or resort. Da da da. And now I've met with the top family owners, and they want me to come down in January. And I have a media company with Jesse where we're actually now doing the direct marketing. We'll building a relationship because they're spending $500,000 a month paying people at the airport for their lead generation with no direct marketing. So we're going to put our lead generation in place, our ad spend, all of our systems in place. This is another thing that we're working on right now.
What are you, if you were to encapsulate, the biggest lesson from 2023, what would it be?
Don't quit. Don't quit. Because, I'm human like everybody else. I have really, really bad days like every entrepreneur out there. And I can't tell you how many days a month that I'm like, look, I got enough cash. I got enough money. I don't need to work, right? What am I doing this for? And the point is that without purpose, you're lost, right? We all look at the exit strategy, right? Oh, let me sell my company for whatever, gazillion dollars, right? But they never think about what the next phase. Let me tell you something. When you've been juiced up for this long, for this many years, you think that you're just going to stop and relax and sit on a chair with a pina colada? I give the average successful entrepreneur 2 weeks. That's it. And you're going to fucking be pulling your hair out because you got no purpose, right? So, I think that people really need to think there is an exit strategy, but what is the next phase in your life? What is the next purpose in your life? If you want to exit your company, that's great. I recommend it. I think there's a next journey for everybody. I think we all evolve, and look how I'm evolving into different things now, right? And then people say to me, what do you do for a living? I said, I wash cars, right?
How many detail shops are in the US roughly?
So right now, this is before COVID. We did a study with Dun& Bradstreet. The detailing and appearance industry, which would be like wraps, PPF, clear bra, coatings, and so forth, was before then was a $15 billion industry worldwide during COVID. Was right. We did the statistics with Dun & Bradstreet. It's 15 billion. I would imagine today it's in the 25 to 30 billion worldwide, because think about it, everybody likes a clean car, right? Everybody likes to impress, right? And so, I think that for me, my journey, my purpose is to go on and continue to be a steward of direct marketing. I've been studying Dan Kennedy. Everybody knows Dan Kennedy, the OG of marketing. That's who Frank Kern learned from. I think marketing is amazing. And I think that if you build a good team around you, you can help a lot of people scale, right? And I think that, like Brad, look at Brad's, his VT system, right? Video training, right? He changed the game. He was one of the first guys in the industry, pretty much the first guy who come up, and now you got Kajabi and Thinkific and all these different platforms. But I think what happens is we come up with these great ideas, but we stop evolving. If you think you've seen Evo around everywhere in my company, and the reason I use the word Evo, an evolution, constantly moving and changing. And that's why I call it Evo, right? In my lines of products. Because if you're not changing, you're not reinventing, people get bored. Look at social media. Look at the attention span of people swiping. I mean, I do it, right? And what's good marketing, good messaging? It's the hook, it's the story, it's the offer. And if you're missing that, do you think that you're going to convert? No. And a lot of people are like, well, how do you build a great ad? I just gave you the answer. But you got to get around other people in your industry and look at what they're doing. I didn't say copy. I said, look at what they're doing, because there's always something trending. And if you're not trending, guess what? You're behind. What did Ricky Bobby say? If you're first, you're what? You're last. If you're not first, you're last. If you're not first, you're last. And I think of some of the guys I know in the industry, in different industries, I think masterminds are powerful. I think that if you don't have the money to attend a mastermind, I think that you need to go to the Better Business Bureau, the Chamber of Commerce, right? Where you can get around other business owners. I think that going out to environments of successful people, going to a hotel bar that's, $20 coffee, forget about the $20 coffee. Think about the people in that environment. Think about the relationships you can build. I think that if you're fishing in the wrong pond, you're going to keep giving shitty fish. Go fish in a new pond. Go find a new place to hang out. Stop hanging out where you're hanging out. Stop associating with the people who aren't doing anything with their lives. Doesn't mean you don't love them. Doesn't mean you don't care about them. But guess what? Distractions cost you what? Time, and
Focus.
success, and focus, right? And so you want to get around more people that are on the same page as you. And there's a lot of people out there, but you got to go to the right environment to find the people that can help boost you, not bring you down. Hanging out at your local bar isn't the answer. Going to the nightclub and partying and spending $5,000 a table in Vegas, it is not the answer. Those are people who are just wanting to have a good time. Those are people that aren't looking for success. They're looking for the easy way. And guess what? There is no magic pill. Everybody thinks there's a shortcut. That's the problem with social media. All these shortcuts. Oh, you can make this with your Amazon, third-party store. You can do this, and you can make $1 million. Look at my cars. Jay, and I know, we've met some of these people behind the scenes. They got nothing. They got nothing. And anybody that told you they made that money that quick, they're full of fucking shit. You got to put in the time. You got to have the clarity, the focus, the discipline, the commitment, the grit. Because if you don't, and you do stop, guess what you do? It's like racing a car. What if I'm in a car and I'm racing around a track and I want to win, and I just stop in the middle of the track to take a break? You think that I have any chance of winning? No. I don't look in the rearview mirror. All I do is look in front of me. That's it. You just got to keep going, man. You just got to keep pushing. And when you don't want to get uncomfortable, guess what? You're not going to grow. If you don't want to take risk, you're not going to grow. So I think that the people out there in the podcast have to realize that we all have a purpose. And the purpose is really important. And it doesn't matter what people think of your purpose. It only matters what you think of your purpose. Build what you want. Do what you want. Be you. Don't worry about other people. If you have mentors or coaches, that's great. Just take the best of what they have in their skill sets and apply it to what you want and keep moving.
Man, Rich, thank you for your time tonight. I hope this is part one of many more shows to come. If you're listening to this, how can people follow you, to stay in contact with you and or reach out to get involved with Glossit? What's the fastest way?
Well, I think, one of the things is that I'm not a big, and here's my wife she's from Venezuela. She likes social media. She likes beauty and buying things, right? And me, I don't personally post a lot on my personal page, but if you guys want to follow me, it's The Real Rich Light, and that's Light. That's how you spell my last name. Or if you're a car guy and you want to know more about what my car collection or my life looks like, go to @Glossit, GLOSSIT. And if you want the opportunity to learn more about how to get in the automotive space, or if you want to start a business, appearance business, go to glossituniversity.com. And if you want to set up a 15-minute sprint call with one of my team to learn more about the opportunity, go to glossituni.com. That's a sprint call that we offer, goes into our lead generation, and one of our sales team will pick up the phone and have a conversation with you.
Rich, thank you. Thank you. If you're listening to this, please share this to someone that needs this. Please share this to a friend. Please leave a review at the Culture Matters podcast, Apple, Spotify. Follow Rich, and we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jay.